Hello, my name's Rachel Starr, and I'm going to talk a little bit about one approach to reading Mark's Gospel. Since the 1970s, there's been an increasing awareness that we read the Bible out of our own experience as particular people in particular places and at specific moments in time. As a feminist scholar, I'm used to reading the Bible as a woman and to ask questions about power, voice and visibility in the text, considering how the text has been interpreted in relation to women and how it might be read in ways that are liberative for women and for all people. But it's only recently that I have begun to think about what it might mean to read the Bible as a white woman. What do I notice and what do I miss while reading while white? How do I begin to critique an interpretive tradition that has, in its formal settings, been dominated by white scholars, mainly from North America and Europe, and an interpretive tradition which has often resulted in the Bible being used in harmful ways against the well-being and humanity of many other people from around the world? In a talk that I gave recently at the Dismantling Whiteness conference, I suggested that reading the Bible as a white person involved a number of different steps. First, it begins, as I think any good reading does, with recognizing and challenging the violence that is present within the biblical text and is present within our own lives. Once we try to avoid naming the violence in the text, we are often led to avoid naming the violence in our own lives, and that is something that the work of Gina Hens-Piazza lays out really helpfully. Secondly, reading while white means that I have to acknowledge my white identity and the privilege that often affords me, the unearned white privilege that I carry with me and need to address. Thirdly, it means decentering myself. It means assuming that I am not the centre of every story. And fourthly, it means seeking out possibilities for healing and solidarity in the text and in its interpretation. So how might such an interpretive approach shape how I read the story of Jesus' encounter with the Syrophoenician woman in Mark chapter 7? It means, and I think this is something we find problematic to do as Christians, it means I need to be willing to name the encounter as problematic, more to name Jesus' words and actions as problematic. There is a violence in this text, and to deny or excuse how Jesus humiliates and denies the needs of the woman and her daughter is dangerous. It means I also need to ask, where am I in this story? And to recognise that I am neither the saviour nor the victim, but perhaps a witness to the encounter who needs to ask, how might I step into this situation in a way that helps healing to take place? So a question then for you as you read this text. How in your reading of this story and in your day-to-day living will you seek out possibilities for healing and solidarity? How, to quote African-Brazilian scholar Silvia Regina de Lima, will you meet God under the table, sharing the crumbs of a subversive faith which sustains us in the saving work of justice?
The subversive reading of Mark chapter 7 verses 24 to 30, or reading this text in a subversion Bible, I find two important insights from this text. Firstly, this text is about the resilience of a woman whose name is not known, a woman who is from a region outside of the Jewish territory, and a woman who has come not for her own need, for the need of her own daughter's healing, is here offering all resilience and even challenging Jesus Christ trying to offer healing, because Jesus gives in an analogy and she gives a counter analogy, and then Jesus says her faith has been commended. So she offers all kinds of resilience, and resilience comes from her sides of being on the margins. And she has shown resilience in faith, resilience in her commitment, and resilience to see to it that healing and justice comes to her daughter. The second insight I see from this text is the knowledge from below. Knowledge is power has been one of the famous sayings people ascribe to. But which knowledge is power? Or the other way, these days, power is knowledge, or the knowledge of the powerful has been an accepted norm. When Jesus gives in an analogy trying to say, I have first come to a community that speaks about food, children's food, then uh, this woman counters and offers a knowledge from below and tries to give an analogy where she says, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. So, in this conversation, we see on one hand the woman's resilience, we see where Jesus had to change his heart, or we also see where Jesus provides that space for negotiation, for conversation, for agreeing, and that theological engagement is what we see where Jesus affirms knowledge is not hierarchical, no one's knowledge is a norm, but knowledge has to be shared by all people from all ends. So, this woman, by challenging Jesus Christ, where Jesus had to have a change in his opinion, and further says, your daughter will be healed. So I think that is an important learning for us from this text as we read it today, to see that we are called to be resilient in our faith. No matter what our circumstance, we are called to offer resilience, because our public sphere today is filled with post-secularism and is filled with globalization. So a call for us is to be resilient in our faith and try to say faith has a space and faith is relevant in the public sphere. Secondly, we are called to offer a space for negotiation. Knowledge is no one's monopoly. Knowledge has to be shared, and it is in the collective knowledge, in the knowledge from below, where we need to affirm and listen to. And if we can have that listening heart and listening ears and an open heart, our faith will be more relevant. Jesus was challenged by a woman, and healing happened to her daughter. So may resilience and that collective knowledge continue to be the channels where we can move forward as a church in this 21st century.
Good morning. My name is Madipoane Masenya, Professor of Old Testament Studies attached to the University of South Africa. This morning I would like for us to share a few words on the text of Mark chapter 7 verses 24 through 30, read through a Bosadi womanhood redefined lens. Maungwana o swara thipa ka bogaleng, says a Northern Sotho proverb. The translation: a mother holds a knife by its cutting edge. It is no wonder that a parent who comes to Jesus to seek deliverance on behalf of a child in Mark 7, 24 through 30 would be a woman. An African South African Bosadi reader of the text is also not surprised by the humility of this woman from an outsider race, one of Syro-Phoenician origins. She prostrate herself before Jesus, whose fame as a miracle worker she would probably have heard about. The woman's mission is that of a beggar. She pleads for the deliverance of her daughter from an evil spirit. Alas, she meets with a response which would naturally have discouraged her from continuing with her mission. That is, that the preferred recipients of the food, read deliverance, are children, read Jews, and not the dogs, read Greeks or Syro Phoenicians, according to Jesus. Isn't it the evangelist Matthew has revealed, quote unquote, salvation is of the Jews? Poverty, alienation, struggles connected to single life perhaps, most probably taught the woman to persist against all odds. This amazing faith, interestingly, from unlikely places, if you like, enables the woman to receive not only a reassuring response, even more importantly, it leads to an answer to what she has been yearning for, that is, the deliverance of her daughter. In the view of the Syro-Phoenician woman, everybody, even those who are deemed outcasts by virtue of their gender, race, status as former colonial subjects, among others, has a share in the redemptive mission of Jesus, the deliverer. And hence, quote unquote, yes, Lord, yet the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Mark 7:28. This ecologically conscious woman believes that humans, red children, and animals, red dogs, all have a share in God's mission of redemption through Yehoshua, Jesus, the deliverer. Such a persistent faith from a woman of an outsider race moves Jesus to deliver her daughter from an evil spirit. Like the Syro-Phoenician woman, African South African women, these ones who have held a knife by its cutting edge. From colonialism through apartheid to post-apartheid South Africa, these who rank among the highest people who fill the South African church pews on Sundays, the intercessors of our time, will be affirmed by the persistent faith exercised by a mother on behalf of her daughter. They will be encouraged to know that prayers are not always answered immediately, that persistent faith in Jesus is critical to unlocking the blessings that God has in store for all humanity, including even for the marginalized in our communities. Thank you.
Mark chapter 7, verses 24 to 30 is a challenging text. In our readings, often we try to find some learning point from Jesus' sayings or actions. Here in this narrative, we get a different picture of Jesus. In this story, a woman from Syro-Phoenician region came to Jesus with her sick daughter and asked him to heal her. But Jesus said, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." From my experience, referring a particular person or a group of people as a dog is to humiliate and dehumanize them and ignore their existence. This resembles a Dalit community in India. Not very long ago, there used to be board on most of the high caste temples and shops which said dogs and untouchables are not allowed. Even in some of the temples, it said all Hindus and all animals, including dogs, are admitted. Only untouchables are not admitted. Dalits are treated worse than animals. From the perspective of Dalits, who have been experienced alienation from temple entry and denial of access to worshipping God freely, resembles the Syro-Phoenician woman encounter with Jesus. Once my Hindu friend asked this question: if Jesus wasn't willing to heal the daughter of Syro-Phoenician woman who is from neighboring country, how could he heal, let alone love, someone in the southern part of India? And I thought that was a legitimate question. Did Jesus respond to the woman as a traditional Jewish man? Or was Jesus trying to convey something to his disciples by asking the questions that they might have asked? Or do we need to accept the fact that Jesus himself is contradicting to his purpose of coming to this earth? Or, as we understand, Jesus was fully human, therefore he is conditioned and influenced by the dominant ideology of his time? When we compare this story with other passages in the Gospel, such as Jesus encounters Samaritan woman, where Jesus voluntarily reaching out to her to meet her needs. But the dialogue and the words Jesus utters here in this Markan narrative do not feel like they are Jesus' words. I find it hard to get a grasp on what Jesus is saying here, since it contradicts his teachings and all his other acts recounted in the Gospel. Jesus, one who voluntarily reaching out to the marginalized community. Now, when a woman approaches him, he is not willing to offer the healing. What I could get from this passage is the way the woman persuaded Jesus to get her request granted. Firstly, the courage to challenge the person who holds the power to heal is the lesson I get from the woman. The woman had to fight for her daughter's healing when the group of people get that freely and they don't have to struggle for it. The courage to challenge the power made her daughter's healing possible. Secondly, her faith changed the heart of Jesus and healed her daughter. For me, faith is not confined to one way of understanding, and it is not related to religion, religion is a human-made form of faith identity. When people around Jesus thought that they were the righteous and pure in their faith by following Jewish religious practices for lifelong, Jesus said to this woman, "You have great faith. Your request is granted." Does Jesus made an outsider into an insider in this narrative? When we talk about inside and outside, we need to remember where we stand, and that decides who is inside and who is outside. In this incident, for me, it is not Jesus who brought the woman into where he is. Rather, the woman brought Jesus into her side, where she understood the grace of God is available beyond our territory. To be part of God's family, our status, our background should not be an obstacle. More than that, Jesus at the end exalts the faith of the woman. Her faith made her daughter heal. In a society where Dalits, especially women, are not allowed to enter into the most holy places of high caste temples, the great faith of Syrophoenician woman is a way forward to be resilient, not only to get her daughter healed, but also made her faith recognized by others, and also to get her rights she deserves as a human being. The woman's courage and her faith made her daughter's healing possible.
Hello, this is David Holgate from Manchester Cathedral, offering a short reflection on Mark chapter 7, verse 24 to 30. In this short video, I'll be using the tools of interfaith dialogue and feminist criticism to read this passage, and also the simple tool of geography. The story is set outside the realm of the Jewish community. That is, it's outside the region of Galilee, which was first ruled by Herod the Great and then by his son Herod Antipas. And so Jesus and his disciples travel outside their own region to a Gentile part of the country, a Greek part of the country. And the gospel writer makes it clear by describing the woman that Jesus encounters as a Gentile, as of Syrophoenician origin. Gentile here in Greek, the word is Hellenes, refers to someone who is outside the Jewish world. And so this woman is defined by being a non-Jew, a Canaanite, we would say today a Palestinian. Yet she begs Jesus for help, and his first response is a culturally determined, "Sorry, you're not a Jew." But instead of going away, she responds, "Yes, but you as a Jew also have an obligation to non-Jews because you worship the God of mercy and justice." Uncomfortably, all this is couched in the language of little children and little dogs, and we find it incredibly uncomfortable to think that Jesus was comparing a Gentile child to a little dog. Apparently he did make this child-dog distinction. Yet the Gentile woman engages with him as a Jewish man and challenges him to connect with the deeper elements of his Jewish faith and identity. And in this, we see the power of dialogue taking place. There is a power imbalance between the woman and the man, between the Gentile and the Jew. But dialogue enables the age-old difference between these categories to be overcome. And this is obviously still needed today, if we simply reflect on the events taking place at the moment in Israel and Palestine. But when we read this passage, we remind ourselves that we need to always be aware that our relationships with the other can be overcome through dialogue. And so the words and actions of this Gentile woman give us hope.